Donald Trump's proposal to impose sweeping tariffs on goods imported from Canada, Mexico and China has raised alarms among economists and trade experts who warn it could trigger a global trade war with severe economic consequences. In a social media announcement last night, Trump declared his intention to levy tariffs on all imports from these three countries unless they take steps to curb migration and drug trafficking into the United States. Typical Trump, confusing immigration with the economy and finance and trade, thinking that one has something to do with the other, not understanding that these things can be separate, and not understanding that there doesn't always have to be a winner. And I think that this really is the issue with Donald Trump. He claims that he is an expert at the art of the deal, but what he's effectively doing is blackmailing these neighbouring countries. These countries are not on the other side of the world. These countries in Canada and in Mexico share a land border with the United States. They should be the US's closest allies, and yet Donald Trump sees everybody as an enemy unless they do something for him. Well, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum on Tuesday warned Trump of dire economic consequences for both countries from tariffs and suggested possible retaliation following the threat of across-the-board tariffs of 25% on Mexico and Canada. She said one tariff will follow another in response and so on until we put our common businesses at risk. She wrote a letter to Donald Trump when she read aloud at a press conference warning that tariffs would cause inflation and job losses in both countries.
Quiero compartirles a ustedes, a todos los que nos ven, una carta que el día de hoy estoy enviando al presidente electo Donald Trump.
A un arancel vendrá otro en respuesta, y así hasta que pongamos en riesgo empresas comunes. Sí, comunes. Siempre hemos manifestado la disposición de México para evitar que siga la epidemia de fentanilo en los Estados Unidos, que por lo demás es un problema de consumo y de salud pública de la sociedad de su país.
Sheinbaum also added that she would seek a call with Trump and send a letter to the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Trump, who takes office on the 20th of January, said last night that he would impose a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico until they clamped down on drugs, particularly fentanyl, and migrants crossing the border. Mexico is the United States' top trade partner this year, representing over 15% of total trade, followed by Canada at nearly 14%. The US is also Mexico's top trade partner. And yet again, Donald Trump cares nothing for the detail, trying to make the fentanyl crisis somebody else's problem. What sense is there in escalating cross-border tariffs, Sheinbaum added, underscoring that they would hit particularly hard the US car makers with plants in Mexico such as General Motors and Ford. Mexico's automotive industry is the country's most important manufacturing sector, accounting for over 35% of manufactured exports by value. The US is by far the dominant destination for vehicles made in Mexico, with up to 79% of them heading north across the border. Tariffs could violate the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, a trade deal the countries signed in 2020 during Donald Trump's first administration.
De acuerdo con las cifras de la Patrulla Fronteriza y de Aduanas de su país, CBP, los encuentros en la frontera entre México y Estados Unidos se han reducido en 75% de diciembre de 2023 a noviembre de 2024.
Sheinbaum said her administration had shown Mexico's willingness to help fight the fentanyl epidemic in the US, that apprehensions of migrants at the border were down, and that migrant caravans were no longer arriving at the US-Mexico border. She also noted that criminal groups in Mexico were still receiving guns from the US and not the other way round. Keith Rockwell, a former director at the World Trade Organization, cautioned that retaliation from affected nations is almost certain. The US exports hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods to those countries, he said. Anyone who thinks that they won't respond hasn't been paying attention. China quickly warned of the mutual harm such measures would cause. "No one will win a trade war or a tariff war," said a spokesperson at the Chinese embassy in Washington. Canadian officials highlighted the importance of their strong economic ties with the US, with the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, emphasizing their balanced and mutual beneficial relationship, something that Donald Trump seems willing to tear up to give the impression that he is coming in to fix it, to fix a problem that doesn't exist. Economists at ING estimate Trump's border tariff proposals could cost each U.S. consumer up to $2,400 annually, potentially increasing inflation, reducing consumer spending, which drives 70% of the U.S. economy. They said the potential increase in consumer costs could have widespread economic implications. Trump has long praised tariffs as, his only tool to protect American interests and grow the economy, famously calling them the most beautiful word in the dictionary. But public opinion suggests otherwise. A Harris poll found that 69% of respondents believed that tariffs would increase the prices that they paid for goods. The former head of the IMF's China division described the move as heralding a new era of U.S. trade protectionism, and warned that the tariffs could disrupt both domestic and international trade as others seek ways to counteract the economic fallout. While Trump and his allies argue that these actions would boost the U.S. economy, despite not having any real data to back that up, and claims that they'll reduce trade deficits, experts caution that they could likely backfire, raising costs for consumers and prompting retaliatory measures that harm U.S. exporters. Rather than focusing solely on economic benefits, Trump framed the tariffs as a means to address issues like immigration and the opioid crisis, and blamed Canada and Mexico for ridiculous open borders and accused China of enabling the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Apparently, Trump sees tariffs as a tool for tackling a variety of external threats to U.S. society, economy, and national security. Further proof that he really doesn't have any other policies at his disposal. He is devoid of ideas. As Donald Trump prepares to take office, his tariff announcements have already set the tone for a contentious trade agenda, leaving the global community bracing for what could become a new era of economic conflict. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.